wow, another Invader Sim video! I'm autistic, how did you know? All goofs aside, I absolutely love the show and I do plan to make a big video on it one day. But for now, we're going to be talking about one episode. An episode, in my personal opinion, is the darkest of the show. Hell, I even argue that I don't think this episode could ever be made today, but we'll put a pin in that for later. But before I say that, let me just say one thing. I did not find Dark Harvest to be scary. Look, different things are scary for different people. I'm not going to shame anyone if they find this episode to be creepy, but I feel like this kind of caused a big hysteria because of a real-life killer removing people's organs. If you're interested in the story, I will link a video by Dire Trip. He makes a lot of well-made videos about true crime, and I think you should check him out if you're interested in that. Another thing that I would like to mention is, hi, my name's Raby. I'm an autistic person with borderline personality disorder, or BPD for short. Part of my struggles living with the disorder is that I have a hard time with mixed thinking or gray feelings or whatever you normal people call it. I am trying to get better with the help of my therapists and doctors, but I'm also making videos challenging my black and white thinking. Anyways, let's talk about why I personally think Bad Bad Rubber Piggy is the darkest episode of Invader Zim. Also, to be clear, and to clear things up, no, Dib was not going to be killed off in this episode and replaced by a character named Bluey. That was a joke made by Joe and Veskus. You guys need to stop taking seriously what this funny man says. I am very sick and tired of misinformation and rumors spreading in the Invader Zim fandom or in the animation fan community as a whole. Oh boy. Okay, I promise, this is the last one. Let's actually talk about this episode, gamers. The episode starts with Professor Membrane on TV talking about how dangerous space-time object transfer device Feeny is, as sending an item to the past can alter the future. But then we see Zim building said machine anyways. Zim plans to send a robot to destroy Dib from the past. Also, there is this, funny moment of Gur thinking about this time paradox so much that their head explodes. Is funny. However, the robot that Zim built is not compatible, and out of anger, Zim throws a rubber piggy into the machine. This piggy turns out to be compatible with the machine and causes a 3-year-old Dib to crash into the tree. Meanwhile, Dib and Gaz bicker about finishing the last bit of cereal. Bro, who still has the cereal box after said cereal is gone? Anyways, because of the piggy from the past, this altered how Dib looked. He's missing a few teeth and has a claw for one of his hands. Dib questions if he has always been like this, and Gaz responds that he's been like this since the accident. Gaz turns on the TV, and it's Bloaty's Pizza Hut commercial, and Dib gets triggered by the sight of pigs. We will put a pin in that for later. It will be important. Also, here's one of the best lines ever that I will be voicing to avoid copyright. Why, my piggy? I loved you, piggy. I loved you. I'm sorry. I love that line so much. Me and my girlfriend quote it all the time. Anyways, the next piggy thrown causes Dib to lose even more teeth. Wearing this tube thingy, I'm not sure what it's actually called, but feel free to comment if there's a real life condition that causes people to be like this, and also possibly gets brain damage. Dib then questions Gaz again if things have always been like this, and questions why pigs are trauma for him. Oh, and we then see this shot that's only there for a few seconds of the bike and helmet that Dib was on in Zim's base. I didn't notice it for the first time watching it, but rewatching this a few times to make this video, holy shit, that's dark. Anyways, there's this really cute moment of Zim letting Gur play with the toy piggies. I love their sibling relationship. It's adorable. Now look at Zim throwing another piggy in the time machine, causing Dib's life to get worse. Dib goes on the way to Zim's house, and Gur was walking with the piggy. At this moment, it all clicks for Dib, and he realizes Zim is behind all the rubber piggies. We then see this disturbing scene of the paramedics in the past failing to save Dib because of the pigs, and he fucking dies. Holy shit. However, not long, because then Dib's father makes the robot to bring him back to life, and fucking Dib is badass because of this, and is destroying Zim's base. Also, there's like this one frame of this cute picture of Zim and Gur with a little heart on it. It's adorable. Zim then tries to throw more piggies back in time, but they end up backfiring, making Dib stronger. There's only one piggy left, and Zim decides to go back in time to warn himself not to do the time machine plan. This then causes Dib to go back to normal like nothing ever happens. But either way, this kid needs a fuck ton of therapy. And that was a quick recap of the episode Bad Better Rubber Piggy. Now, before I get into why this episode is the darkest, I want to share cool facts because I'm autistic. This was the very first episode that has Bloody Gur in it. What is Bloody Gur, you ask? Well, one of the artists working on the show jokingly made this bloody image, this Bloody Gur image, obviously knowing that Nickelodeon will never allow this on the show. While the crew was working on this episode, an executive at Nickelodeon announced to the crew that the show was getting canceled, and to get back at the network, one of the artists hid the Bloody Gur image. I'll show you now. And throughout the last 14 episodes of the show, there is a Bloody Gur hidden in one frame, although it's unclear on where it is now. There's only 2 known sightings. Okay, sorry for, like, autistic dumping, but let's finally get to those pins and unpin them. Complex Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, or CPTSD for short, is a disorder that I suffer with. I mean, what else can I say? I literally have BPD, one of the worst disorders to live with and treat. And this episode has a big theme about trauma and PTSD. First things first, Dib literally gets triggered about pigs on TV. Sometimes something small can give you a PTSD trigger. For my real life example, I find EKG tests to be triggering for me. I know it's just a medical test to help me to make sure my heart's working properly, but like doctors have to put electrodes on certain areas of my body where I get triggered and I usually cry because of my personal trauma. Just as an example. Anyways, another thing about PTSD is memory issues. Dib is asking if things have always been this way. It's actually very common for people to have trauma you can't remember. From what I researched, a good way to help get repressed memories back is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, or EMDR therapy for short. If you feel like you have repressed memories, I recommend asking your therapist about it. I recommend asking for my own therapist about this too. This episode is dark because of its portrayal of PTSD and trauma, and I personally found it very uncomfortable the first time watching it because of that. Also, I just don't like seeing like kids getting hurt in shows. In Invader Zim, like obviously there's like kid characters, but it's usually like just a scratch. Like you can walk it off easily. But here Dib is literally getting more and more like disabled. However, I'm gonna now go over why I feel like this episode cannot be made today. And this is gonna be a bit of a hot take. I do not think this episode could be made today because of its portrayal of mental health. While I did mention some realistic connections about PTSD and trauma in this episode, these moments are all played for jokes, and I highly doubt that the creators were doing some research about trauma and PTSD before making this episode. We now live in a world where people are more aware about mental health and mental illness, but unfortunately some people still don't take mental health seriously. And having a kid show making fun of mental illness characteristics is begging to be banned. I'm surprised this episode is not banned now. And look, it was the 2000s. It was cool to be edgy. People were not as educated back then. But oh boy. Alrighty, let's take it back a little. I know it seems that I hate this episode, but I don't. In fact, I've grown to love it. But it is, like, flawed, and as I mentioned, it can never be made today. But anyways, that was my video about Bad Bad Rubber Piggy being the darkest episode of Invader Zim. What do you all think? Am I overthinking this for an episode of a kid's show? Is there an episode you thought was dark? Let me know in the comments below. I'm hoping to finish this video around March since that's an interesting month for me personally. And I first watched Invader Zim with my dog Tiffany around March 2023, and so it's kind of like an anniversary for that, and I miss my dog so much. Feel free to check out my other socials in the descriptions below, and have a good night. Hi, editing Ravy from the future. This is unscripted. I just would like to, state this, for the love of all that is holy. I am not a professional. I am not a therapist. Hell, I am mentally ill myself. I don't want to have, just because I know a lot about mental health and treatment doesn't mean I am, a professional. I can't really help other people. Yeah, I would just like to specify that. Please do not see me as, this savior, if you're, in a crisis. I would like to talk and help to the best of my ability, but I am not a hero, I'm not a professional, and I need to, learn how to help myself before I can help others. But anyway, this is my new Discord account in case you would like to talk to me, play video games with me, or want to ask about commissions. Yeah, and these are my socials. Anyways, have a good night. Yeah.